Jasmine Winters clutches her stinging cheek in the first-class cabin, tears welling as flight attendant Bethany towers over her, finger pointed. "Your kind doesn't belong here," Bethany hisses. Then a shadow falls across them both. Maxwell Winters, hidden from Bethany's view moments before, rises to his full height, eyes cold with fury. "That's my daughter you just assaulted," he says quietly. The flight attendant's face drains of color as she realizes the black man she's been dismissing is the airline's largest investor. Would this moment of casual racism destroy lives, careers, and even an entire corporation? Before I begin this shocking true story, tell me where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and standing up against discrimination, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more powerful stories that expose the truth behind closed doors. For 17-year-old Jasmine Winters, that morning began like any other luxury travel experience. Dressed in designer jeans and a simple cashmere sweater, she boarded Skyline Airways' premium first-class cabin alongside her father Maxwell Winters. Few passengers recognized the unassuming black man in wire-rimmed glasses as the tech billionaire worth $11.2 billion, who had revolutionized artificial intelligence security systems across 3 continents. Maxwell preferred traveling incognito, observing how people behaved when they didn't know his net worth. Today's flight would reveal ugly truths he never wanted his daughter to experience. Flight attendant Bethany Parker noticed the father-daughter pair immediately. Her tight smile never reached her eyes as she greeted other first-class passengers warmly, while giving the Winters only a curt nod. When Maxwell politely requested a pre-flight water for Jasmine, Bethany seemed not to hear. Continuing to fawn over the elderly white couple across the aisle, Jasmine shot her father a knowing look. This wasn't their first encounter with subtle discrimination. "Maybe she's just busy, Dad," Jasmine whispered, always giving people the benefit of the doubt. Maxwell squeezed her hand, proud of his daughter's generous spirit. The discrimination escalated 30 minutes into the flight. While Maxwell visited the restroom, Bethany approached Jasmine with a hostile expression. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Mrs. Davidson has reported her Bose headphones missing. They're quite expensive." Jasmine looked confused. "I'm sorry to hear that, but what does that have to do with me?" Bethany's eyes narrowed. "They disappeared shortly after you walked past." Her seat. Jasmine felt her cheeks burn as several passengers turned to stare. "I have my own headphones," she replied calmly, pulling her custom purple ones from her bag. "I didn't take anything from anyone." "Well, someone did," Bethany insisted, voice dripping with accusation. "I'll need to check your bag." "You don't have legal authority to search my personal belongings," Jasmine responded, her pre-law knowledge kicking in despite her humiliation. Bethany's face hardened. "Listen, young lady, either you cooperate or I'll have security waiting when we land." "Is there a problem here?" asked an elderly white man seated across the aisle. "Nothing to worry about, Mr. Jenkins. Just addressing a theft situation," Bethany replied sweetly. "I didn't steal anything," Jasmine protested, fighting back tears. "Then open your bag," Bethany demanded, reaching for it. "Don't touch my property." Jasmine pulled her bag away. The sudden movement seemed to trigger something in Bethany. Her hand shot out, slapping Jasmine hard across the face. "Know your place," she hissed quietly enough that only Jasmine and the closest passengers could hear. "Your kind doesn't belong in first class." A stunned silence fell over the cabin. Jasmine's cheek burned from the impact. Then a deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's my daughter you just assaulted." Maxwell Winters stood in the aisle, cell phone recording, his normally gentle expression replaced by cold fury. Bethany's eyes widened as recognition dawned. Every flight attendant recognized Maxwell Winters, whose investment group owned 23% of Skyline Airways stock. "Mr. Winters, I didn't realize," Bethany stammered, face draining of color. "Clearly." Maxwell's voice remained dangerously calm. "I'd like the captain and your supervisor here immediately." The flight erupted into chaos. The lead flight attendant rushed over, profusely apologizing. Bethany disappeared into the galley. The captain's voice soon came over the intercom, asking if Mr. Winters would like them to divert to the nearest airport. "That won't be necessary," Maxwell replied when the senior flight attendant held out the phone. "But make no mistake, this incident isn't over. My daughter was assaulted by your employee because of the color of her skin. There will be consequences." For the remainder of the flight, the crew practically tripped over themselves serving the Winters family. Jasmine barely touched her food, the burning humiliation still fresh. The elderly couple who had been treated so warmly earlier now couldn't meet her eyes. The man who had asked about the problem stared intently at his magazine. "I just want to go home and forget this," Jasmine whispered to her father. Maxwell took her hand. "Some things shouldn't be forgotten, sweetheart. Some things need to be changed." As the plane began its descent, Jasmine noticed Bethany whispering urgently into a phone in the galley. The flight attendant's eyes darted nervously toward them before quickly looking away. Whatever was coming next, Bethany Parker was already working to protect herself. Jasmine had no idea that this single incident would soon spiral into a battle that would threaten everything her father had built. The moment Jasmine and Maxwell stepped from the jetway, they were greeted by an entourage of Skyline Airways executives in crisp suits and plastered-on smiles. Leading the group was Senior Vice President of Customer Experience, Victoria Adams, hand outstretched and apology ready. "Mr. Winters, Ms. Winters, I cannot express how deeply sorry we are for this unfortunate incident," Victoria gushed, her practiced corporate smile never faltering. "We've already suspended the employee in question pending investigation." Maxwell didn't shake the offered hand. "My 17-year-old daughter was racially profiled, falsely accused of theft, and physically assaulted on your aircraft. Unfortunate incident seems like a significant understatement." Victoria's smile tightened. "Of course, absolutely inexcusable. If we could speak privately?" She gestured toward the exclusive Skyline lounge. Inside the plush lounge, far from curious passengers and potential smartphone recordings, the real conversation began. Jasmine sipped water while three executives presented their solution: $50,000 compensation, a lifetime of premium status, and a non-disclosure agreement. Maxwell slid the papers back without reading them. "You misunderstand the situation. This isn't about money." "Mr. Winters, we completely understand your frustration," said Thomas Reeves, Skyline's legal counsel. "But incidents like these are best resolved quickly and privately." "Incidents like these?" Maxwell repeated coolly. "How many incidents like these has Skyline Airways experienced?" The executives exchanged glances. Jasmine, who had remained quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I want to know about Bethany Parker. How long has she worked for Skyline?" After uncomfortable silence, Victoria admitted, 14 years. "And has anyone ever complained about her treatment of minority passengers before today?" Another uncomfortable silence spoke volumes. "I thought so," Maxwell said. "This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. And I won't sign anything that helps you hide it." The meeting ended with thinly veiled threats about the complexity of proving discriminatory intent and the court of public opinion being unpredictable. As they left the airport, Maxwell was already on his phone, activating his network of investigators. Within 24 hours, despite Skyline's attempts to suppress it, smartphone video of the slap went viral. Maxwell's investigators unearthed 12 previous complaints against Bethany Parker for discriminatory behavior, all mysteriously resolved without disciplinary action. Deeper digging revealed a troubling culture throughout Skyline Airways, with minority employees relegated to lower positions and numerous passenger complaints buried by legal settlements. Then the threats began. First, subtle messages through business channels suggesting Maxwell consider the broader implications of his actions. Then anonymous emails warning that some flights encounter unexpected turbulence. Maxwell increased security around their home but refused to back down. "Dad, maybe we should just let it go," Jasmine suggested after a particularly frightening call. "It's affecting your business meetings. People are canceling." "That's exactly why we can't let it go," Maxwell replied, showing her his tablet. On screen was internal correspondence from Skyline CEO Richard Whitman to the PR department. Make this go away. Discredit the girl if necessary. Find something, anything in her past. Nobody threatens this airline, especially not them. They're trying to destroy your reputation because they can't defend their actions, Maxwell explained. This goes beyond one flight attendant. The rot starts at the top. His words proved prophetic the next morning when manipulated footage appeared on several news sites, selectively edited to show Jasmine acting aggressively before the slap. Social media accounts with suspiciously similar creation dates began posting stories claiming Jasmine had a history of fabricating discrimination claims. Maxwell's investigators traced the campaign to a crisis management firm hired by Skyline Airways. But something didn't add up about the ferocity of the response. Why would an airline risk everything to protect one flight attendant? The answer came from an unexpected quarter. A financial analyst friend called with disturbing news. Maxwell's chief business rival, Thomas Griffin, had been quietly increasing his ownership stake in Skyline Airways over the past year. Griffin, whose autonomous vehicle technology competed directly with Maxwell's AI systems, now sat on Skyline's board. This isn't just about racism anymore, Maxwell told Jasmine that night. Griffin sees an opportunity to weaken me. He's using this situation to damage my company's stock price and reputation. Jasmine stared at the ceiling fan spinning above her bed. So I'm just collateral damage in some billionaire power struggle? Maxwell sat beside her. No, sweetheart. You're the catalyst for exposing something ugly that needs changing. But I need to know if you're prepared for how difficult this fight might become. Jasmine took a deep breath. I kept quiet when that woman at the country club followed me around the store. I said nothing when my teacher assumed I cheated because my test score was too high. I'm done being silent, Dad. Whatever happens, I won't hide. Neither of them could have predicted just how vicious the battle would become, or how far-reaching the conspiracy truly was. Have you ever been discriminated against and felt helpless to fight back? Comment number 1. If you've experienced racial profiling or witnessed it happening to someone else. What would you do if you had the resources of a billionaire to fight against systemic racism? Would you take on the entire system like Maxwell, or would you protect your family by walking away? Hit that like button if you believe justice is worth fighting for, and subscribe to follow this family's incredible battle against corporate corruption. But how far would Skyline Airways go to silence the Winters family? The answer might shock you. The smear campaign began with surgical precision. First came the exclusive interview with an unnamed former classmate claiming Jasmine had fabricated racial incidents at her previous school. Next, business publications suddenly questioned Maxwell's ethics in acquiring patents, despite his widely recognized philanthropic work. By week's end, Bethany Parker tearfully told a sympathetic interviewer she was the real victim of a powerful family's vendetta. I've dedicated my life to customer service, Bethany said, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes. Now I'm afraid to leave my house because a billionaire didn't like how I handled a routine theft investigation. The interviewer nodded sympathetically. And you're saying there was no racial component to this interaction? Absolutely not. I would have responded exactly the same way regardless of the passenger's race. This is about wealth and power, not race. The Winters family thinks their money puts them above the rules. Maxwell watched the interview with his security chief, former FBI agent Ramon Santos. Notice how they never mention the slap, Maxwell observed. Or the fact that the missing headphones were found in the seat pocket where the passenger left them. Classic misdirection, Ramon agreed. But this coordination suggests resources beyond what a flight attendant or even an airline should have. The answer came the next morning when Maxwell discovered his private emails had been hacked. Selected messages, stripped of context, appeared on a gossip website, painting him as ruthless and calculating. More disturbing was what the hackers had accessed: communications with his legal team about the Skyline case. They know our strategy, Maxwell told his attorneys during an emergency meeting conducted in a security-swept conference room. And they're paying social media influencers to spread disinformation. His lead attorney, Angela Washington, nodded grimly. We've identified 19 accounts with millions of followers suddenly posting negative content about you and Jasmine. The coordination suggests professional management. The personal attacks intensified. Death threats arrived at their home. Jasmine's private school classmates began avoiding her, whispering when she walked by. Several parents canceled playdates and withdrew party invitations to her younger brother Miles. During a parent-teacher conference, Jasmine's history teacher suggested that perhaps Jasmine is struggling with the attention from the incident when her previously perfect grades dropped. The administration expressed concerns about disruption to the learning environment. That evening, Jasmine found racist notes in her locker. When she reported them, the principal simply said, "Without evidence of who placed them there, there's little we can do." No investigation was conducted. Maxwell's business began suffering. Longtime partners suddenly became unavailable for meetings. A government contract worth millions, previously all but guaranteed, went to a competitor without explanation. Shareholders whispered about leadership distractions. Through persistent investigation, Maxwell's team discovered that Skyline Airways' largest individual shareholder was none other than Thomas Griffin, who had been acquiring stock through shell companies. Griffin's autonomous vehicle company directly competed with Maxwell's AI security systems, with both bidding for a critical Pentagon contract. "This isn't just about a slap anymore," Maxwell told his inner circle. "Griffin is using this situation to destabilize my company before the contract decision next month." Even more disturbing was the discovery that their initial lawsuit against Skyline Airways had stalled because their lead litigation attorney had secretly taken meetings with Griffin's representatives. The betrayal cut deep. "We're switching legal teams immediately," Maxwell announced. "But first I want to know exactly how deep this corruption goes." The answer proved more disturbing than anticipated. Ramon's investigation revealed that the judge assigned to their case had received free first-class flights from Skyline for years. 3 board members of Jasmine's school had business relationships with Griffin companies. Even their longtime family physician suddenly referred them to a colleague without explanation. "They're isolating us," Jasmine observed during a family security briefing, "creating the impression that we're toxic, paranoid, playing the race card." Maxwell nodded. Grimly, classic psychological warfare. Make the target feel alone and unsupported, question their perception of reality. That night, someone broke through their security perimeter and spray-painted racial slurs across their garage door. When police arrived, the officer suggested it might be teenagers playing pranks rather than connected to the ongoing case. As cameras flashed from paparazzi hiding in bushes across the street, Jasmine watched her father's face grow more determined. The message was clear: drop the case or watch your life be systematically destroyed. "They don't know who they're dealing with," Maxwell said quietly as security teams installed additional measures around their home. "They think because I'm wealthy, I've forgotten what it's like to fight. But some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost." He couldn't know that the cost was about to become much higher, or that betrayal would come from those closest to them. Maxwell Winters had built his business empire on understanding systems and people. When faced with coordinated attacks from multiple fronts, he responded by assembling an elite team of civil rights attorneys led by renowned litigator Marcus Johnson. Alongside them, he brought in digital forensics experts and former intelligence officers specializing in corporate malfeasance. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was information warfare. His first shock came during a secure briefing in a swept room when his security chief Ramon identified the source of their leaked legal strategy. The information could only have come from 5 people with access to those servers, Ramon explained, sliding a folder across the table. "We've eliminated 4 based on digital footprints and access logs." Maxwell stared at the remaining name: Vincent Carter, his CFO and friend of 15 years. "That's impossible," Maxwell said, even as the evidence mounted. Vincent had mentored him when he started his company. He'd attended Jasmine's birthday parties, brought her souvenirs from business trips. Why? Ramon's investigation revealed the ugly truth. Griffin's companies had been quietly acquiring a medical technology startup where Vincent's son served as CEO. The acquisition terms included performance bonuses worth millions if specifics. Corporate objectives were met before the fiscal year end. He sold us out, Maxwell said quietly after confirming the evidence himself. Vincent was terminated immediately, but the betrayal cut deeper than business. It signaled how far their opponents would go and how vulnerable they truly were. Jasmine faced her own betrayal the same week. Her best friend since elementary school, Zoe Williams, had been her strongest supporter initially. Then Jasmine discovered private text conversations they'd shared about the incident appearing in gossip blogs, deliberately edited to make her sound vindictive and calculating. How could you? Jasmine confronted Zoe in the school courtyard. Zoe couldn't meet her eyes. My dad works for a company that does business with Skyline. They told him his entire department would be outsourced if he couldn't control his daughter's associations. I'm sorry, Jazz. My family can't afford to lose his income. The isolation strategy was working. Students whispered about the lawsuit, girl in hallways. Teachers who had previously praised her work now found constant fault. The debate team captain informed her that her controversial status made her participation detrimental to team cohesion. At home, Maxwell faced similar pressure. His company board called an emergency meeting where longtime ally and board member Richard Taylor suggested separating personal matters from company business. This lawsuit is becoming a distraction, Richard said while others nodded. Markets hate uncertainty. Our stock is down 8%. Perhaps a quick settlement would be in everyone's best interest. Maxwell studied the faces around the table, wondering how many had been compromised, threatened, or bought. Gentlemen, I built this company on two principles: excellence in technology and integrity in action. What message would we send to our employees, particularly our minority employees, if I abandoned those principles now? That profits matter more than people. That justice is negotiable. The board meeting ended in uneasy stalemate, but Maxwell knew the pressure would only increase. That night, he explained the situation to Jasmine. They're trying to force us to choose between justice and stability, he said, between doing what's right and protecting what we've built. Jasmine looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and she'd lost weight. Maybe they're right, Dad. Look what this is doing to your company, to Miles's school experience, to our family. Is one slap worth all this? It's not about the slap anymore, Maxwell replied gently. It's about the system that made Bethany Parker believe she could slap you without consequences. It's about the corporate culture that protected her despite previous complaints. It's about powerful men like Griffin and Whitman who think they can crush anyone who challenges them. Their conversation was interrupted by Ramon bringing urgent news. An encrypted message had arrived from someone claiming to be a black employee at Skyline Airways. The message contained internal emails showing discrimination far beyond Bethany Parker. Black passengers were flagged for additional security screening. Minority employees were consistently passed over for promotion. Complaints were systematically buried. There are more of us who want to come forward, the message concluded. But we need protection. Similar messages began arriving daily. Former flight attendants revealed they'd been instructed to provide different service levels based on passenger profiles. Baggage handlers reported racial coding systems for luggage handling priority. Each message reinforced what Maxwell had suspected. Bethany Parker wasn't an anomaly, but a symptom of something much larger. As allies emerged, so did new threats. Sophisticated hackers breached their home security system, posting private videos online. Anonymous users threatened Miles at his gaming platforms. Maxwell's company faced surprise regulatory audits. Jasmine's school threatened expulsion, citing attendance issues during days she met with attorneys. They're panicking, Ramon observed during a security briefing. Escalating because conventional pressure tactics aren't working. Maxwell nodded. But why involve so many resources over one discrimination case? Something bigger is at stake. The answer came from an unexpected direction. A junior transportation department official contacted them through secure channels, revealing that the government regulatory agency overseeing airlines had been compromised. Griffin had planted allies throughout the department, ensuring favorable treatment for companies he invested in, and creating regulatory hurdles for competitors. This goes beyond Skyline Airways, the whistleblower explained. Griffin is creating a transportation monopoly through regulatory capture, and your lawsuit threatens to expose the entire network. Maxwell now understood the stakes. This wasn't just about one flight attendant's racist action or even one airline's discriminatory culture. They had inadvertently pulled on a thread that could unravel a vast tapestry of corruption, one that reached into government agencies and across multiple industries. That night, as security teams swept their home for new surveillance devices, Maxwell found Jasmine sitting alone in the dark. "I never wanted any of this," she whispered. "Sometimes I wish she'd never slapped me." Maxwell sat beside her. "But she did. And now we have a choice about what that means. Sometimes the moments that hurt us most become the moments that matter most." Neither realized that their darkest hour was still to come, or that Jasmine would soon face danger far beyond cruel words and social isolation. The market spoke first. As news of the lawsuit spread and the boycott movement gained traction across social media, Skyline Airways stock plummeted. Within 3 weeks, share value dropped 18%, erasing nearly $2 billion in market capitalization. Emergency board meetings were called. Investment analysts downgraded projections. The airline's carefully crafted image as a premium carrier lay in tatters. Bethany Parker reappeared on television, this time on a sympathetic talk show where she shared a completely fabricated account of her difficult childhood and poverty, and how she had overcome obstacles through hard work, painting herself as the victim of wealthy elites. She never addressed the slap directly but implied that any contact had been defensive in nature. "I've dedicated my life to serving others," she said, voice quavering perfectly. "Now I can't even buy groceries without people harassing me because of manipulated videos and false accusations." The host nodded sympathetically. "And all because you were simply doing your job, investigating a theft." Maxwell watched the performance with his legal team, noting how skillfully the narrative had been crafted to avoid mentioning the racial elements while portraying the Winters family as privileged bullies. The story spread rapidly across platforms, known to amplify outrage without verification. The professional attacks intensified simultaneously. Maxwell's company lost a major contract worth $35 million when the client suddenly cited reputational concerns. Board pressure mounted daily, with several members suggesting Maxwell take a temporary leave of absence until personal matters are resolved. The strain began taking a physical toll on the family. Jasmine, constantly surrounded by security yet isolated from former friends, developed insomnia and anxiety. During a particularly stressful week of depositions where airline attorneys questioned her character for hours, she collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. Maxwell sat beside her hospital bed, watching her sleep, doubt creeping in for the first time. Was justice worth his daughter's health? The company he'd built from nothing? The security and stability he'd worked so hard to provide for his children? When Jasmine woke, she immediately recognized the conflict in her father's eyes. "You're thinking about dropping the case," she said softly. Maxwell took her hand. "I'm thinking about you. About what matters most." "Dad, do you remember when you took me to see Great-Grandma Rose before she died? She told me about drinking from colored water fountains and sitting in the back of the bus. She said her generation fought so mine wouldn't have to." Jasmine's voice strengthened. "But that's not how it works, is it? Each generation has to fight their own version of the same battle." Before Maxwell could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. A young black woman in scrubs entered quietly. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, checking Jasmine's IV. "I'm Kendra, your night nurse." Something in her manner caught Maxwell's attention. After ensuring they were alone, Kendra spoke quickly. "Mr. Winters, I need to tell you something. I was a flight attendant for Skyline Airways for 3 years before I left for nursing school. What happened to your daughter isn't rare. I saw it happen to passengers regularly." "Did you report it?" Maxwell asked. Kendra's smile was bitter. "Multiple times. The last report got me transferred to overnight cargo flights until I quit. But I kept copies of everything." She slipped a flash drive into Jasmine's water cup. "There's more of us. We've been watching your fight." The flash drive contained hundreds of internal emails, including directives from Skyline executives about passenger profiling for service optimization. More damning were communications showing the airline had created protocols for handling discrimination complaints, specifically designed to wear down complainants and minimize settlements. One email from CEO Richard Whitman explicitly stated, "Make the process so exhausting and invasive that they'll take any offer to make it stop." While Maxwell absorbed this new evidence, Ramon burst into the hospital room, security team on high alert. "We've intercepted communications about a potential threat," he said tersely. "Someone accessed your family's schedule. They know Jasmine is here." The hospital security footage later revealed 3 men in maintenance uniforms examining the emergency exits near Jasmine's room before being scared off by an unexpected security patrol. Background checks revealed all 3 had connections to a security firm regularly contracted by Griffin Enterprises. "They were planning to reach her here," Ramon concluded grimly. "This has escalated beyond intimidation." The physical danger forced Maxwell to make a difficult decision. That night, he moved Jasmine to a secure location while he publicly appeared to continue normal activities. Miles was sent to stay with trusted relatives abroad. Their home stood empty, but monitored, a honeypot for whoever sought to harm them. Jasmine, watching news coverage of her father entering their home alone from her secure apartment, made her own decision. "I won't be silenced by fear," she told Ramon when he checked on her. "If they're willing to physically harm me over this, what have they done to others who didn't have our resources?" Using secure communications, Jasmine began coordinating with former Skyline employees who had contacted them. Their testimonies formed a pattern spanning years of systematic discrimination, retaliation against whistleblowers, and corporate cover-ups. With guidance from Maxwell's legal team, she helped organize their evidence and experiences into compelling narratives. Maxwell, meanwhile, leveraged his technology expertise to create secure communications channels for whistleblowers. Using encryption techniques developed for his government contracts, he established a digital platform where victims could share experiences without exposure. The turning point came when his security team uncovered a plot far more sinister than corporate retaliation. Monitoring communications between Griffin's security contractors revealed plans to access the Winters home security system not just for surveillance, but to stage an accident that would appear unrelated to the lawsuit. "This stops being corporate espionage the moment they contemplate physical harm," Ramon warned. "We need to involve federal authorities." Maxwell agreed, but with one condition. "We need to be strategic about what we reveal and when. If Griffin has compromised regulatory agencies, we need to know which law enforcement officials we can trust." The family entered a new phase of their battle, operating from secure locations, communicating through encrypted channels, and carefully documenting every threat. Maxwell's company continued operations under acting leadership, while he focused entirely on uncovering the full extent of the conspiracy. Jasmine, despite the danger, found new purpose in connecting with other victims. "They wanted to isolate us, make us feel powerless," she told her father. "Instead, they've connected us to a community of people fighting the same battle." Maxwell watched his daughter grow stronger, even as external pressures mounted. The shy teenager who once avoided conflict had become a determined young woman unwilling to be silenced. He wondered when exactly the transformation had occurred, whether it was the moment of the slap or during the long struggle that followed. "They thought wealth would make us back down to protect what we have," Jasmine observed during a secure video call. "They don't understand that some things matter more than money or comfort." Maxwell nodded. "They miscalculated badly." Neither could have predicted just how badly their opponents had miscalculated, or how the next phase of their fight would expose corruption reaching into the highest levels of business and government. Have you ever stood up against powerful forces trying to silence you? Comment number 1 if you believe in fighting for justice even when the odds seem overwhelming. Would you risk everything you've built to expose systemic corruption? Hit the like button if Jasmine's courage inspires you, and subscribe to see how this battle against corporate giants continues. But what was the real motivation behind Thomas Griffin's ruthless attempts to destroy the Winters family? The truth will leave you speechless. Maxwell Winters had built his fortune by identifying systemic vulnerabilities and creating solutions. Now, operating from a secure compound with a core team of trusted advisors, he applied those same principles to fighting Skyline Airways and Thomas Griffin. His first strategic move surprised everyone: transparency. Using secure servers immune to corporate hacking attempts, Maxwell created a digital platform called TruthSpeak, where victims of corporate discrimination could safely share their experiences. Within 48 hours, the site received over 3,000 submissions, not just about Skyline Airways but dozens of major companies. Each submission underwent verification protocols designed by former intelligence officers before being published anonymously. Make it impossible for them to control the narrative, Maxwell instructed his team. When one voice can be silenced or discredited, thousands cannot. The response from Skyline executives was panic. Internal sources reported CEO Richard Whitman demanding his board find a way to shut down that site immediately, and ordering IT security to identify and neutralize those leakers, whatever it takes. Legal threats arrived hourly, all deflected by Maxwell's elite legal team. As Skyline's stock continued its free fall, pressure mounted from major investors. Whitman called an emergency meeting with Thomas Griffin and other key board members at Griffin's private estate, unaware that one attendee was secretly recording. "This winter situation is spiraling beyond containment," Whitman said, pacing Griffin's mahogany-paneled study. "We need more aggressive measures." Griffin's response was chilling. "The board has authorized additional resources. Use them to neutralize Winters permanently. I don't care how it's done, but this ends now. My acquisition plans can't proceed with him interfering." The recording reached Maxwell through secure channels, confirming his suspicions about Griffin's ultimate objective. This wasn't just about one discrimination incident or even controlling Skyline Airways. Griffin was positioning for a hostile takeover of Maxwell's AI technology company, using the lawsuit as cover to depress its stock price and destabilize leadership. Meanwhile, Maxwell's investigators made another critical discovery. Bethany Parker wasn't just a randomly racist flight attendant. She was the niece of Skyline's chief operating officer, William Parker, who had personally intervened to protect her after previous incidents. The family connection explained why the airline had responded so aggressively to protect a single employee. Deeper digging uncovered Bethany's history outside Skyline. She had been quietly dismissed from 2 previous customer service positions after racial incidents, but always managed to avoid public records through settlements. Her uncle's influence had secured her the prestigious flight attendant position, despite numerous better qualified candidates, including several minorities who had filed discrimination complaints after being passed over. While Maxwell built his case methodically, Jasmine created her own resistance movement. From her secure location, she founded a student coalition against discrimination, connecting with teenagers across the country who had faced similar experiences. Using secure communication channels, they shared strategies for documenting incidents, supporting each other, and creating accountability in their schools. The response from Jasmine's school administration was swift and punitive. Students who openly joined her coalition received warnings about disruptive activity. Parents reported pressure from school board members to control their children's social media activity. Several teachers who had supported the initiative were called to meetings about appropriate boundaries in student mentorship. Maxwell observed these developments with growing concern. "They're trying to isolate you even in the digital space," he told Jasmine during their nightly secure call, using institutional pressure to silence support. Jasmine smiled for the first time in weeks. "It's having the opposite effect. Every time they pressure someone, 3 more students join. We're documenting everything, creating our own evidence database." Maxwell's pride in his daughter was tempered by fear for her safety. Griffin's resources seemed limitless, his reach extending into unexpected places. The family maintained rigorous security protocols, changing secure locations regularly, using decoy vehicles, and limiting digital footprints. The stakes escalated when Maxwell's technology employees delivered an unexpected ultimatum. They would resign en masse if he backed down from the discrimination fight. Led by his minority engineers and developers, Over 70% of his workforce signed a statement supporting his stance against corporate discrimination. "Your battle is our battle," the statement read. "We build security systems to protect people. What meaning does that have if we won't protect our principles?" The employee solidarity strengthened Maxwell's resolve, but also increased Griffin's desperation. Surveillance of the family intensified. Anonymous threats arrived through multiple channels. Maxwell's security team identified 3 separate intelligence-gathering operations targeting their movements, communications, and legal strategy. "They're throwing everything at us," Ramon observed during a security briefing. Professional stalkers, digital intrusion specialists, even former intelligence operatives. The resources deployed suggest this goes beyond corporate rivalry. Maxwell agreed. Griffin isn't just trying to win a business competition. He's fighting to prevent exposure of something bigger, something that would destroy him if revealed. The answer to what Griffin feared came from an unexpected source. A junior analyst at Maxwell's company identified unusual patterns in transportation contract awards across multiple government agencies. Companies connected to Griffin had received 42 major contracts in the past 18 months, often despite superior bids from competitors. "The statistical probability of this occurring naturally is virtually zero," the analyst explained. "Something is influencing these decisions beyond merit." Further investigation revealed Griffin had established a sophisticated network of influence reaching into transportation regulatory agencies. Through strategic hiring, consulting contracts, and carefully disguised bribes, he had effectively captured the government bodies responsible for oversight of his growing transportation empire. "This isn't just about discrimination on one flight," Maxwell told his core team. "It's about systematic corruption that allows discrimination to flourish because oversight has been compromised. Griffin fears our lawsuit could expose his entire network." The revelation explained the extraordinary resources deployed against them, but also provided strategic leverage. If Maxwell could prove regulatory capture, Griffin faced not just public relations damage, but potential criminal charges. As Maxwell developed this new angle, Jasmine faced a different challenge. Despite security precautions, her school managed to contact her with an ultimatum: return to classes within 1 week or face expulsion for truancy. The administration rejected all evidence of threats to her safety and refused remote learning accommodations. "They're forcing me to choose between education and safety," Jasmine told her father, frustration evident. "Just like Zoe had to choose between friendship and her family's financial security. That's how the system works, creating impossible choices." Maxwell considered options. "We could find another school, perhaps international." "No," Jasmine interrupted firmly. "Running from one institution to another doesn't fix the problem. We need to change the institutions themselves." She leaned forward, eyes bright with determination. "Dad, I think it's time we stop playing defense." Her words crystallized something Maxwell had been considering. From the beginning, they had been responding to attacks, trying to protect themselves while building their case methodically. Perhaps the time had come for a more assertive strategy. "You're right," he said finally. "We've been allowing them to set the terms of engagement. That ends now." Together, they began planning a counteroffensive that would transform their private battle into a public reckoning, unaware that their opponents were already mobilizing political and legal resources for what they hoped would be a final, crushing blow against the Winters family. The first signal that powerful forces were aligning against them came through legal channels. Judge Harold Whitfield, newly assigned to their case after a suspicious recusal by the previous judge, dismissed key portions of their lawsuit on technical grounds so dubious that Maxwell's attorneys were momentarily speechless in the courtroom. "With all due respect, Your Honor," lead attorney Marcus Johnson argued, "the precedent you're citing was effectively overturned by the Supreme Court in Harrington versus Atlantic Regional last year." Judge Whitfield peered down from the bench. "I'm familiar with Harrington, Counselor. I simply disagree with your interpretation of its applicability here." Outside the courtroom, Marcus didn't mince words. "That wasn't a legal decision. It was a hit job." Further investigation revealed Judge Whitfield had taken 4 luxury judicial conferences, sponsored by organizations with direct ties to Griffin Enterprises. The judicial setback was just the beginning. Within days, Maxwell received notice that the Internal Revenue Service had initiated a comprehensive audit of his business holdings, personal finances, and charitable foundation. The audit scope was unusually broad, requesting records going back 7 years. "This isn't random," observed Maxwell's tax attorney. "Someone pulled strings." These types of comprehensive audits are extremely rare without specific red flags, none of which exist in your filings. Political allies began distancing themselves as well. Senator James Wilson, who had attended Maxwell's annual charity gala for 5 consecutive years and publicly praised his business innovations, suddenly couldn't return phone calls. Congresswoman Diana Maxwell, who had proudly highlighted her shared heritage with the Winters family during her campaign, issued a carefully worded statement about waiting for all facts to emerge before commenting on private legal matters. Behind the scenes, Skyline Airways had engaged Black Mirror, an elite crisis management firm with deep government connections. Founded by former intelligence officials, Black Mirror specialized in reputation reconstruction and narrative management for corporations and wealthy individuals. Their methods were shrouded in secrecy, but results typically involved coordinated media campaigns, strategic leaks, and leveraging government connections. The firm's influence became apparent when Maxwell's banking relationships began deteriorating. His primary bank suddenly raised concerns about compliance risks associated with his accounts. 2 investment partners required additional verification procedures for routine transactions. A commercial real estate deal in development for months abruptly fell through when financing became unavailable. "They're trying to financially strangle us," Maxwell told his core team, creating friction in every business relationship, increasing transaction costs, making normal operations difficult. More disturbing were the security breaches. Despite state-of-the-art protection, sophisticated surveillance devices were discovered in both Maxwell's office and the family's temporary residence. Their phones showed signs of advanced interception technology, typically available only to government agencies. Security experts confirmed someone had planted bugs throughout their home during a period when it stood empty. The surveillance extended to physical tracking. Jasmine noticed the same vehicles repeatedly appearing near her secure location. Once, returning from a meeting with former Skyline employees, her security detail identified a professional surveillance team following them, using 3-car rotation techniques to avoid detection. "These aren't corporate security contractors," Ramon reported grimly. "These are specialists, likely former intelligence. The sophistication suggests government resources or someone with access to them." The realization that their opponents had potentially compromised government functions was confirmed when Maxwell reached out to Senator Marcus Brooks, his childhood friend who now served on the Transportation Committee. After days of unreturned calls, Marcus finally agreed to meet at a secure location away from Washington. "I can't be seen with you right now, Max," Marcus said, refusing to surrender his phone before conversation as security protocol required. "There's too much heat." "From whom?" Maxwell pressed. Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Everyone. Griffin has donated to 47 campaigns in the last cycle. He has allies in every transportation regulatory body. The narrative they're pushing is that you're using racial allegations to distract from business improprieties." "That's absurd," Maxwell responded. "We have documented evidence of discrimination, video, witnesses, internal communications." "Evidence doesn't always matter in Washington," Marcus said quietly. "Perception does. And right now, the perception is that crossing Griffin or Skyline Airways means career suicide." Before departing, Marcus warned Maxwell quietly, "A transportation department official contacted me unofficially. He said you're making powerful enemies and should consider the broader implications." That wasn't just friendly advice, Max. It was a message from people who can cause real damage. The warning coincided with Ramon's discovery that Maxwell's phones, email, and secure messaging systems showed signs of government-grade intrusion attempts. Someone with access to advanced surveillance tools was targeting them specifically. More alarming was the realization that the attack network extended beyond Griffin and Skyline Airways. Maxwell's team identified coordinated efforts from multiple industry leaders with transportation interests. Aviation companies, shipping conglomerates, rideshare giants, and autonomous vehicle developers had aligned against him. Griffin has convinced them you're a common threat, Ramon explained, showing Maxwell evidence of executives from competing companies meeting secretly. He's positioned your discrimination lawsuit as the first domino that could topple their shared arrangements. Maxwell understood the implications. This isn't just about covering up racism at one airline. It's about protecting a system of regulatory capture that benefits them all. The pressure reached new heights when Skyline executives held a secret meeting with other industry leaders at an exclusive resort. Security was extreme, with electronics prohibited and participants arriving separately to avoid detection. One attendee, however, had grown increasingly uncomfortable with the conspiracy's direction. This anonymous executive contacted Maxwell through elaborate channels, sharing details of what was discussed. A coordinated strategy to not merely defeat the Winters lawsuit, but to destroy Maxwell's business, reputation, and family permanently. The group had allocated nearly $50 million to the effort, viewing it as an investment in protecting their broader interests. They called it the Winters solution, the executive reported, to make an example that would discourage anyone else from challenging their practices. Griffin was explicit that half measures wouldn't suffice. That night, Maxwell gathered his core team to reassess their strategy. The forces aligned against them were more powerful than anticipated, with reach into government, judiciary, and financial systems. "We're not just fighting a company or a billionaire," Maxwell observed. "We're fighting an entire system designed to protect itself." Jasmine, listening quietly, finally spoke. "Then we need to expose the whole system, not just one part of it. If we make this solely about what happened to me, they can isolate and discredit us. But if we connect it to the larger pattern," Maxwell nodded slowly, "we need to shift our focus from winning the lawsuit to exposing the network. The discrimination incident is just the entry point to something much bigger." As they developed this new approach, none of them realized that someone within their inner circle was already compromised, reporting their plans directly to Griffin's team. The betrayer's identity would shock them all, nearly destroying their efforts at the most critical moment. Maxwell Winters had built his fortune creating AI security systems that identified hidden patterns in seemingly unrelated data. Now, working from a secure command center with his most trusted technical experts, he applied those same analytical tools to map the forces aligned against his family. The results revealed a conspiracy more extensive than even he had suspected. "We've identified a coordinated digital attack pattern across 17 different media platforms," reported Amara Chen, his lead data scientist. "The content appears to come from diverse sources, but linguistic analysis shows 83% probability it originates from a single content farm." Further investigation traced the digital campaign to a shell company called Meridian Strategic Communications. Financial records showed Meridian received funding through a complex series of offshore entities, ultimately leading back to Transfuture Holdings, one of Thomas Griffin's investment vehicles. "They're laundering the narrative," Maxwell observed, "creating the illusion of organic public opinion while concealing the source." The discovery was just the beginning. As Maxwell's team expanded their investigation, they uncovered a vast network of seemingly unrelated companies, regulatory officials, media outlets, and judicial appointments, all connected through Griffin's influence. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. Late one evening, Maxwell received an encrypted message requesting an urgent meeting. The sender identified himself only as a former Skyline Airways board member with critical information. Security protocols were extreme. The meeting location changed 3 times before Maxwell was directed to an abandoned warehouse, retrofitted with signal-blocking technology. Inside waited Harold Remington, who had resigned from Skyline's board 6 months earlier, citing health concerns. "My health is fine," Remington said after confirming they weren't being monitored. "I left because I couldn't stomach what was happening. Whitman has been implementing passenger profiling for years, targeting black first-class passengers for service verification to, in his words, maintain cabin atmosphere." Remington provided access to board minutes and executive communications showing CEO Richard Whitman had specifically instructed staff to create friction for minority passengers in premium cabins through subtle service discrimination. The goal, according to one email, was to discourage certain demographics from becoming regular premium customers, while maintaining deniable plausibility. The slap was never supposed to happen, Remington explained. The protocol was psychological pressure, not physical confrontation. Bethany Parker went off script, but the system behind her actions was deliberate and systematic. More damning was Remington's revelation about the company's incident response. Skyline Airways maintained a specialized legal team dedicated solely to handling discrimination complaints, with standard procedures for intimidating complainants, burying evidence, and forcing unfavorable settlements. They called it problem passenger processing, Remington said bitterly. The assumption was always that the minority passenger was the problem, never the airline's practices. Armed with this insider testimony, Maxwell's investigators dug deeper into Bethany Parker's history. They discovered she had been involved in 5 previous unreported incidents with minority passengers, each resolved through the company's specialized protocols. In one case, a black female executive had been removed from a flight after Bethany claimed she seemed agitated when merely requesting a pillow. Parker wasn't a rogue employee, Maxwell told his legal team after reviewing the evidence. She was the product of a culture that encouraged her behavior and protected her from consequences. Further investigation revealed internal documents outlining Skyline's systematic cover-up protocol, including detailed procedures for handling video evidence, intimidating witnesses, and pressuring complainants. One document explicitly instructed staff to exhaust minority complainants through procedural complexity to encourage acceptance of minimal settlements. While this evidence strengthened their discrimination case, Maxwell sensed there was more to Griffin's aggressive response than protecting one airline's reputation. The coordination between seemingly competitive companies made little sense unless larger interests were at stake. The answer came from financial analysis. During the weeks of controversy surrounding the lawsuit, Griffin's companies had been quietly positioning for a hostile takeover of Maxwell's technology firm, systematically acquiring shares as the price dropped due to negative publicity. This isn't just about discrimination, Maxwell realized. Griffin is using the controversy as cover for an acquisition attempt. He wants my AI technology. The revelation explained the extraordinary resources deployed against them, but raised a critical question. Why was Griffin so determined to control Maxwell's technology specifically? The answer came from a deeper investigation into Griffin's government contracts. Maxwell discovered Griffin's transportation companies had recently secured a classified contract to develop integrated passenger screening technology for implementation across all transportation hubs. The system would use facial recognition and behavioral analysis algorithms to flag passengers for additional screening based on risk profiles. He's building an automated profiling system, Maxwell told Jasmine during a secure call, and he needs my AI architecture to make it work effectively. That's why he can't just compete with us normally. He needs our specific technology. The implications were disturbing. Griffin planned to institutionalize and automate the same discriminatory practices Skyline Airways had implemented manually, scaling them across the entire transportation sector with government approval. The lawsuit threatened to expose the embedded bias before the system could be deployed. Jasmine processed this information quietly before responding. So, this isn't just about what happened to me. It's about what could happen to thousands of people every day if this system goes live. Exactly, Maxwell confirmed. And that explains why the response has been so extreme. This is about future profits and government relationships worth billions. While Maxwell uncovered the business conspiracy, Jasmine made a discovery at her school. Working with trusted classmates, she identified a network of students being paid to report her movements, conversations, and online activities. The payments trace back to a private security firm regularly contracted by Griffin Enterprises. They've turned my classmates into informants, she told her father, hurt evident in her voice. More disturbing was the realization that her school administration had provided access to her academic records and personal file without legal authorization. Several teachers had been pressured to report any concerning behavior that could be used to undermine her credibility. The surveillance extended into their most private spaces. During a routine security sweep, Ramon discovered sophisticated listening devices planted throughout their temporary residence. The technology signature matched equipment typically available only to government agencies or their contractors. "Someone physically breached our security," Ramon reported grimly. "And they left this deliberately where we would find it." He placed a handwritten note on the table. "Walk away while you still can." Instead of intimidating them, the discovery galvanized their resolve. Maxwell realized the family home invasion represented a critical escalation, suggesting their opponents were growing desperate as more evidence emerged. "They wouldn't take such risks unless they feared what we're uncovering," he observed. The final piece fell into place when Maxwell's team identified unusual trading patterns in his company's stock. Analysis revealed Griffin's shell companies were positioning for a hostile takeover during the controversy, accumulating shares at depressed prices while simultaneously spreading disinformation to drive values down further. "The discrimination lawsuit isn't separate from the business attack," Maxwell explained to his team. "It's the central component of Griffin's strategy. By positioning me as racially motivated and vindictive, he creates cover for predatory business tactics while attempting to secure technology that will institutionalize discrimination on a massive scale." The pieces now formed a coherent picture. Griffin's transportation empire, built through regulatory capture and political influence, needed Maxwell's AI technology to implement automated passenger profiling with government approval. The lawsuit threatened to expose inherent bias in the system before it could be deployed nationally. Armed with this understanding, Maxwell prepared to shift from defense to offense. The battle was no longer just about one incident of discrimination, but about preventing the systematic implementation of bias across the entire transportation infrastructure. As they developed this new strategy, a final shocking discovery awaited them. Late one night, Jasmine found a threatening message left in her bedroom at their secure residence. "Not even your security chief can protect you." The implication was clear and devastating. Someone within their innermost circle had betrayed them, someone with access to their most secure locations and knowledge of their movements. As they reviewed security footage, the painful truth emerged. Ramon Santos, their trusted security chief, had been compromised. "This changes everything," Maxwell said quietly as they watched Ramon disabling security systems to allow outside access. "We can trust no one outside ourselves." The betrayal forced them to abandon all existing safe houses and security protocols, retreating to a contingency location known only to Maxwell and Jasmine. From this final sanctuary, they would launch their counterattack against Griffin's network, unaware that the most dangerous phase of their battle was just beginning. Can you imagine discovering that someone you trusted completely has been working against you all along? Comment number 1 if you've ever experienced betrayal from someone close to you. How far would you be willing to go to expose a system that profits from discrimination? Hit the like button if you're amazed by the Winters family's determination to fight against overwhelming odds, and subscribe to see how they'll respond to this devastating betrayal. But with their security chief compromised and powerful forces closing in, can Maxwell and Jasmine survive the coming storm? The next part of this story will show you just how dark things can get before the dawn. The systematic dismantling of Maxwell Winters' reputation began at dawn. Coordinated across all media platforms, the attack left nothing untouched. Business publications questioned his company's AI ethics standards. Technology blogs suddenly discovered privacy concerns in products that had been in market for years. Financial analysts issued negative forecasts based on anonymous insider information. Social media amplified accusations from former employees who had been terminated for cause, now reinvented as whistleblowers against alleged corporate misconduct. Maxwell watched from their new secure location as his life's work was methodically attacked. "They're not just trying to discredit the lawsuit anymore," he observed to Jasmine. "They're attempting to erase everything I've built." The business impact was immediate and severe. Within hours of the coordinated media assault, partners began distancing themselves. 3 major contracts worth over $70 million were suddenly under review. Technology integration projects were paused for additional compliance verification. The stock price plummeted, triggering automated trading thresholds that accelerated the decline. Maxwell's board called an emergency session without informing him, violating corporate bylaws in their panic. Only afterward did he learn they had discussed removing him as CEO, stopped only by the intervention of a few loyal members who demanded proper procedure. Even they, however, requested he take voluntary leave until matters are resolved. While Maxwell's professional world collapsed, Jasmine faced physical danger. Returning from a closely guarded meeting with former Skyline employees, she was surrounded by 4 masked individuals in the private parking structure. Only the quick action of her new security detail, personally vetted by Maxwell, prevented a physical assault. The attackers escaped in a vehicle with stolen plates, but security footage captured enough for identification. "They were professionals," said Gabriel Ortiz, the new head of security. "Military or intelligence background based on their movement patterns. This wasn't random street violence." The escalation to physical threats transformed their perspective. This was no longer just a legal battle or corporate rivalry. Someone was willing to harm a 17-year-old girl to protect their interests. The personal attacks extended beyond the immediate family. Maxwell's sister Angela, a university professor unconnected to his business or the lawsuit, was suddenly placed on administrative leave pending investigation of anonymous research impropriety. Claims: Miles, still abroad, reported security breaches at his school. Extended family members found themselves subjected to unusual scrutiny in their professional and personal lives. "They're attacking everyone connected to us," Maxwell realized. Sending the message that proximity to the Winters family is toxic. The isolation strategy proved effective. Longtime friends stopped responding to communications. Professional associates cited scheduling conflicts for canceled meetings. Even their philanthropic foundation faced sudden compliance reviews from regulatory authorities, forcing the suspension of programs serving underprivileged communities. The pressure took its toll on Maxwell's health. Already operating on minimal sleep, the constant vigilance and stress manifested physically. His blood pressure rose to dangerous levels. Chronic headaches interfered with concentration. A minor cardiac incident prompted emergency medical intervention, something he concealed from Jasmine to avoid adding to her concerns. Their breakthrough came from Anthony Davis, a former employee who had been monitoring Skyline Airways' internal communications. At great personal risk, he provided access to recordings proving Griffin had directed the coordinated attacks, specifically ordering his team to make Winters radioactive in every business and personal relationship. More critically, Davis revealed that Ramon had been compromised through his son's gambling debts. Griffin's people had approached Ramon with evidence of his son's criminal exposure, offering to resolve the situation in exchange for information about the Winters family's movements and security protocols. The day after delivering this vital intelligence, Davis disappeared. His apartment showed signs of hasty departure. His digital footprint went silent. Attempts to contact him through emergency channels failed. The disappearance heightened their sense of urgency and vulnerability. If Griffin's network could make a person vanish so completely, what other capabilities did they possess? The answer came in devastating fashion when their new secure location was compromised. Gabriel detected surveillance teams establishing position around the property perimeter, using thermal imaging to map occupancy patterns. "They're preparing for an incursion," he warned Maxwell. "Professional team, likely with tactical experience. We need to evacuate immediately." Before they could implement emergency protocols, Ramon made contact through an encrypted channel, delivering a chilling message. He had provided Griffin's team with schematics of all safe houses, security response procedures, and contingency plans. "You have nowhere safe left," Ramon's message concluded. "Surrender the evidence and case materials, sign the settlement and NDA, and this ends. Refuse, and I can't guarantee your family's safety." Maxwell realized Ramon's betrayal extended deeper than they had imagined. Their former security chief wasn't just providing information, he was actively coordinating the operation against them. With tactical teams closing in and their security compromised, Maxwell activated the most extreme contingency protocol. Within minutes, he and Jasmine abandoned the location with only essential documentation and emergency resources, leaving through a concealed exit moments before security systems were breached. "Everything we've built is gone," Jasmine said as they drove away, watching the compound disappear in the rearview mirror. Our home, your company, our normal lives. Maxwell took her hand. Buildings and companies can be rebuilt. What matters is that the truth survives, even if we don't. The grim reality settled between them. They were now fugitives from a system so corrupt that it could deploy government-level resources against private citizens who challenged it. The forces aligned. Against them reached into law enforcement, regulatory agencies, financial institutions, and media, as they implemented deep-cover protocols, moving between anonymous locations and avoiding all electronic communication. Maxwell finally understood the true extent of Griffin's influence. This wasn't just corporate rivalry or regulatory capture. This was systemic corruption that had metastasized throughout institutions designed to protect citizens. That night, taking shelter in a rural cabin registered under multiple shell identities, Jasmine found her father reviewing their dwindling options with a calm resignation that frightened her more than any threat. "Are we going to lose, Dad?" she asked directly. Maxwell looked up from his notes. "That depends on how you define winning. If winning means returning to our normal lives with your college plans intact and my company secure, then possibly yes. But if winning means exposing the truth regardless of personal cost, then we still have paths forward." Jasmine considered this with the maturity that had developed through their ordeal. "The truth matters more than comfort," she said finally. "But I don't want to see you destroy yourself proving it." Maxwell smiled sadly. "Sometimes the things worth fighting for require sacrifice. The question is whether we're willing to make those sacrifices." As they contemplated this fundamental question, they remained unaware that Griffin's network had already located their new position. Armed teams were moving into position, while legal documents were being prepared to legitimize their apprehension. The darkness was deepening, but neither realized how close they were to the final confrontation. In the intelligence community, it's called a dead drop, a predetermined location where information can be exchanged without direct contact. Maxwell Winters had established 23 such locations with trusted journalists before going underground. Now, as tactical teams closed in on their cabin hideaway, he activated the emergency protocol he had hoped never to use. At precisely 3 a.m. Eastern Time, 19 journalists across 3 continents simultaneously received encrypted packages containing partial evidence of the conspiracy against the Winters family. Each package included verification codes and instructions for accessing additional materials if anything happened to Maxwell or Jasmine. It was a classic dead man switch, insurance that would release damning evidence automatically if they were captured or killed. More importantly, it distributed the information so broadly that no single point of failure could prevent exposure. The journalists received specific instructions: hold the information for 12 hours, then publish regardless of threats or inducements. Legal documentation accompanied each package, authorizing release and protecting the journalists under whistleblower provisions. While this insurance policy deployed, Jasmine executed her own plan. Using a burner phone from their emergency kit, she recorded a raw, unfiltered video telling her story directly to the public. No professional lighting or scripting, just a teenage girl speaking truth about discrimination, corporate corruption, and the lengths powerful men would go to silence those who challenged them. "I'm 17 years old," she began, voice steady, despite the visible exhaustion on her face. "A month ago, I was assaulted on an airplane because of my skin color. Since then, my family has lost our home, my father's company is under attack, and people have tried to physically harm me, all because we refuse to be silent about discrimination." She detailed the systematic harassment, surveillance, and intimidation, techniques deployed against them. She named Griffin, Whitman, and other executives directly, describing their roles in the conspiracy with precise details that only someone with insider knowledge could possess. "I don't know if I'll still be free when you see this," she concluded, "but I need you to understand that this isn't just about what happened to me. It's about a system that protects those who discriminate and punishes those who speak out. Whatever happens to my family, please don't let this truth disappear." The video was uploaded to 17 different platforms simultaneously through anonymous proxy servers. quickly gaining millions of views despite coordinated attempts to suppress it. Within hours, Dar Jasmine Speaks and Vowers Yammer Winter's Whistleblower were trending globally, with thousands sharing similar experiences of discrimination and corporate retaliation. As public opinion began shifting dramatically, Maxwell implemented the next phase of their counter-offensive. Through secure channels, he provided financial and technical evidence to regulatory authorities documenting Griffin's market manipulation scheme targeting his company. The evidence was so comprehensive that even compromised officials couldn't ignore it without exposing themselves to criminal liability. Simultaneously, Maxwell's remaining loyal executives executed emergency corporate governance protocols he had established years earlier. These measures temporarily prevented hostile takeover attempts through specific stock classification provisions, buying critical time while the public narrative evolved. The most devastating component of their counteroffensive emerged from an unexpected alliance. For months, Maxwell had been quietly building connections with other victims of Bethany Parker's discrimination. Working with civil rights attorneys, these individuals had documented their experiences and preserved evidence despite Skyline's attempts to silence them through settlements and threats. Now, coordinated by Maxwell's remaining trusted team members, these victims came forward simultaneously in a powerful class action that overwhelmed Skyline's ability to control the narrative. Some had video evidence, others had preserved internal communications showing the airline's systematic response to complaints. Together, they presented an irrefutable pattern of discrimination that no public relations strategy could obscure. As these accounts flooded media channels, major Skyline Airways investors began questioning leadership directly. Several institutional investors demanded emergency board meetings to address the growing crisis. The stock price, already weakened by the initial controversy, plummeted toward levels that triggered covenant violations in the airline's financing agreements. Griffin, recognizing the existential threat to his plans, dispatched teams to multiple locations hunting for Maxwell and Jasmine, while simultaneously ordering an accelerated schedule for the hostile takeover. His desperation became evident in communications intercepted by anonymous ethical hackers who had joined the Winters cause after Jasmine's video went viral. "This needs to end tonight," Griffin instructed his head of security in one intercepted call. "Find them, secure all evidence, and make sure they understand the consequences of continued resistance. Use whatever resources necessary." The escalation backfired spectacularly when the hackers provided these communications to federal authorities, along with evidence linking Griffin to market manipulation, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. The material was too explicit and widespread to be buried by even his strongest political allies. Maxwell leveraged his remaining business connections to pressure Skyline's commercial partners. Major corporate customers began suspending travel contracts, citing ethical concerns and potential reputational damage. Credit card companies that had previously competed for Skyline's business suddenly required additional collateral for processing services. Aircraft leasing companies initiated reviews of contract compliance. The coordinated pressure created financial strain that further destabilized Skyline's market position, forcing board members to consider whether protecting Whitman and Griffin still served their interests. Several directors, fearing personal liability, began privately communicating with investigators. Most damaging was the identification of a transportation department official who had accepted bribes to provide Griffin's company's preferential treatment in contract awards. The evidence, documented through financial records and recorded conversations, implicated several regulatory officials in a pay-for-play scheme that had facilitated Griffin's transportation monopoly aspirations. When this evidence reached specialized investigative journalists, the story expanded beyond discrimination to government corruption. Federal law enforcement agencies, unable to ignore such public exposure, initiated preliminary investigations despite political pressure to maintain distance. The tide was turning, but Maxwell and Jasmine remained in grave danger. Griffin's tactical teams had narrowed their location to a 3-mile radius and were conducting systematic searches. Their supplies and options were dwindling. Physical exhaustion compromised their decision-making. Without immediate intervention, capture seemed inevitable. In this darkest moment, they received unexpected assistance. A secure communication arrived from a group identifying themselves only as former intelligence professionals, disturbed by the weaponization of surveillance tools against American citizens. These anonymous allies provided extraction support, creating diversionary electronic signals while establishing a secure transit corridor. "We don't know you personally," their message explained, "but we recognize abuse of power when we see it. Our oath was to the Constitution, not to corporations or corrupt officials." With this assistance, Maxwell and Jasmine escaped the immediate threat, reaching a truly secure location for the first time in weeks. From this position of relative safety, they monitored as their counteroffensive gained momentum beyond anything they could have orchestrated directly. Public opinion had shifted dramatically. Major investors were demanding accountability. Government agencies faced pressure to investigate despite political connections. Griffin's carefully constructed network was unraveling as participants sought to protect themselves from the expanding scandal. "They thought isolating us would silence the truth," Maxwell observed, as they watched coverage of protests outside Skyline headquarters. "Instead, they created a movement." Jasmine nodded, exhaustion evident despite her determined expression. "But it's not over. Griffin still has resources and influence. He'll find another approach." Her assessment proved correct. As their evidence forced public accountability measures, Griffin shifted strategy from direct suppression to systemic damage control. If he couldn't silence the Winters family, he would attempt to limit the institutional consequences of their revelations. The battle was entering its final phase, moving from private confrontation to public reckoning. The question remaining was whether truth alone would be sufficient against a system designed to absorb scandals while preserving underlying power structures. The answer would determine not just the Winters family's fate, but the possibility of real institutional change. The Department of Justice announcement came at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, exactly 42 days after Bethany Parker slapped Jasmine Winters. Attorney General Caroline Martinez, flanked by senior officials, addressed a packed press room. This morning, federal agents executed search warrants at Skyline Airways corporate headquarters and multiple related business entities as part of an investigation into allegations of civil rights violations, market manipulation, witness intimidation, and corrupt influence of regulatory functions. The camera flashes intensified as she continued. Skyline Airways CEO Richard Whitman and the executive leadership team have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The department has appointed independent oversight to ensure continued operations while protecting evidence integrity. What the Attorney General didn't publicly disclose was that similar operations were simultaneously targeting Thomas Griffin's business empire. Teams of federal agents were seizing servers, financial records, and communications from Griffin Enterprises offices across 7 cities. Griffin himself, attending a transportation conference in Singapore, found his private jet grounded by local authorities acting on an international law enforcement request. Maxwell and Jasmine, watching from their secure location, recognized this moment as the culmination of their struggle. The system Griffin had corrupted was finally responding, not because of moral awakening, but because the evidence had become too public and explicit to ignore without institutional self-damage. Will it make any difference? Jasmine wondered aloud. Or will they just sacrifice a few executives while preserving the underlying problems? Maxwell considered the question seriously. Systemic change requires sustained pressure. This is just the beginning, but it's a beginning we forced into existence. The reckoning extended beyond corporate offices. Bethany Parker and former Skyline Security Chief Michael Reynolds were arrested on conspiracy and assault charges. Internal documents revealed Reynolds had personally trained flight attendants in profiling techniques designed to discourage minority passengers from premium cabins through selective service standards. As federal investigations expanded, Maxwell's reputation began recovering. Business journalists who had amplified attacks against him published retractions and analyses of how they had been manipulated. Technology publications reviewed evidence of the coordinated campaign, identifying sophisticated disinformation techniques deployed against his company. Maxwell remained focused on rebuilding their lives rather than celebrating vindication. His company had suffered significant damage during the crisis, losing key contracts and talent. The board remained divided about his leadership, despite the emerging truth. Their family home stood empty, security systems compromised beyond repair by multiple intrusions. For Jasmine, the personal transformation was profound. The experience had converted her from a studious, somewhat sheltered teenager into an unexpected symbol of resistance against corporate discrimination. Thousands of messages arrived daily from people sharing similar experiences and drawing inspiration from her courage. "I never wanted to be anyone's symbol," she confided to her father. "I just wanted to be treated like everyone else on that plane." Maxwell hugged her tightly. "Sometimes we don't choose our roles in history. Sometimes history chooses us." The whistleblowers throughout the industry who had risked careers and safety to provide evidence were now coming forward publicly. Former Skyline employees revealed systematic discrimination patterns in hiring, promotion, and passenger treatment. Transportation officials documented how regulatory capture had permitted safety shortcuts and discriminatory practices across multiple companies. Judge Harold Whitfield, facing judicial ethics investigations over his handling of the initial lawsuit and his undisclosed relationships with Griffin Enterprises, recused himself from all transportation-related cases. Several political figures who had publicly criticized the Winters family suddenly announced initiatives addressing transportation equity and corporate accountability. For all these positive developments, Maxwell recognized the fight remained unfinished. Griffin's influence extended deep into systems designed to constrain exactly his type of power. The investigations would face political interference, evidence would be challenged, and witnesses would be pressured to modify testimony. "They'll attempt to transform this from systemic corruption to a few bad apples," Maxwell predicted. "The narrative will shift to individual misconduct rather than institutional failure." His assessment proved accurate when Skyline Airways board chairman called with a surprising proposal. After weeks of emergency meetings assessing the company's deteriorating position, the board had reached a stunning conclusion. They wanted Maxwell to consider accepting the CEO position. "The company needs complete reimagining," the chairman explained. "Someone with both moral authority and business expertise to implement systemic change. Your technology background and visible commitment to fighting discrimination make you uniquely qualified." Maxwell's initial response was disbelief. "You realize the irony? You want me to lead the company that almost destroyed my family?" "Precisely because of that," the chairman replied. "No one else would have the credibility to implement real change. The airline will collapse without dramatic intervention, and 14,000 employees will lose their livelihoods. Many of those employees provided you evidence at great personal risk. Don't they deserve the chance to work for a transformed company?" The proposal created intense debate within the family. Jasmine initially opposed any association with Skyline, viewing it as legitimizing the institution that had traumatized them. Miles feared it would make their family targets for continued retaliation from Griffin's remaining allies. Their perspective shifted after meeting with current Skyline employees, many from minority backgrounds, who saw Maxwell's potential leadership as their only hope for meaningful workplace transformation. These employees had suffered discrimination for years while feeling powerless to change the system. Now they saw possibility where previously they had seen only resignation. "If you walk away, someone else will take control, someone who hasn't lived through what discrimination actually means," explained Darren Williams, a 20-year Skyline mechanic who had secretly provided evidence. "This might be the only chance to rebuild this airline from the inside out." While Maxwell considered this unexpected opportunity, federal investigations continued expanding. Thomas Griffin, attempting to return from Singapore after the initial raids, was arrested during a refueling stop, caught trying to flee to a non-extradition country. Financial analysts uncovered elaborate schemes through which Griffin had manipulated markets, bribed officials, and constructed monopolistic control across transportation sectors. The most personally difficult moment came when Bethany Parker's family requested a meeting with the Winters. Initially reluctant, Jasmine ultimately agreed, seeking understanding rather than reconciliation. The conversation revealed complexities neither had anticipated. Bethany's sister explained how Bethany had been systematically rewarded throughout her career for maintaining cabin standards, a euphemism for discouraging minority presence in premium cabins. Her uncle, Skyline's former COO, had specifically promoted her because she understood passenger expectations and maintained appropriate atmosphere. The system incentivized her worst instincts, her sister admitted. It doesn't excuse what she did, but helps explain how someone becomes that person. This insight reinforced Maxwell's evolving perspective, addressing individual actions without transforming the systems that rewarded them would ultimately fail. Individual prosecution might provide temporary satisfaction, but not lasting change. With this understanding, Maxwell made his decision. He would accept the CEO position at Skyline Airways, not to rehabilitate the company, but to transform it from within. His acceptance came with non-negotiable conditions: complete authority to redesign corporate culture, diversity requirements at all leadership levels, and transparency mechanisms to prevent future discrimination. The board, desperate to salvage the company's collapsing market position, accepted his terms. Maxwell's appointment was announced alongside a comprehensive settlement with discrimination victims, public acknowledgement of past failures, and commitment to measurable transformation metrics. Griffin's capture represented another crucial victory. Though his network continued functioning even with its architect detained, federal investigations revealed he had been collaborating with foreign competitors targeting Maxwell's AI technology, hoping to implement automated discrimination systems globally while avoiding American regulatory constraints. As Maxwell implemented sweeping changes at Skyline, Jasmine channeled her experience into creating an organization connecting privileged teenagers with discrimination victims, building empathy bridges across socioeconomic and racial divides. Her initiative quickly expanded to schools nationwide, creating dialogue opportunities where previously only silence or conflict existed. Using resources from the lawsuit settlement, Maxwell established an industry-wide discrimination monitoring system deployed across multiple transportation companies. The technology used AI analysis to identify potential discrimination patterns in service delivery, hiring, and promotion decisions before they became systemic problems. Just as the family began rebuilding their sense of security, they faced one final act of revenge. Former Skyline executives facing criminal charges and financial ruin orchestrated an elaborate scheme targeting Jasmine during her graduation ceremony. Only Maxwell's anticipation of such a move, based on psychological profiles of the conspirators, allowed security teams to intercept the threat and expose the final members of the conspiracy network. The incident reinforced what they had learned. Throughout their ordeal, vigilance remained necessary even in victory. Systems of power rarely surrendered without deploying every available resource, and transformation required sustained commitment rather than momentary triumph. 1 year after the slap that changed everything, Jasmine Winters stood in the first-class cabin of Skyline Airways Flight 1619, not as a passenger, but as an honorary flight attendant. The symbolic gesture, broadcast live as part of the airline's public recommitment ceremony, represented something few had believed possible: genuine institutional transformation. "Welcome aboard," she greeted passengers with a warm smile, reclaiming space that had once been the site of trauma. "We're delighted to have you with us today on this special journey." The journey was indeed special, though not just for its symbolic value. Under Maxwell's leadership, Skyline Airways had undergone revolutionary change. The executive team now reflected the diversity of the passengers they served. Former victims of discrimination occupied leadership positions throughout the company. Training programs explicitly addressed unconscious bias and established accountability at every level. Most significantly, Maxwell had implemented his AI technology not to profile passengers, but to ensure service consistency regardless of race, gender, or other characteristics. The system monitored service patterns, identifying potential discrimination before it became systemic, while protecting employee and passenger privacy. "Technology is neutral," Maxwell had explained when introducing the system. "It becomes discriminatory only when humans program bias into its operation. Used properly, it can help us recognize patterns we might otherwise miss or deny." The transformation extended far beyond one airline. The lawsuit settlement had funded an industry-wide discrimination monitoring organization with legal authority to investigate complaints across all transportation sectors. Former whistleblowers now led compliance, Departments at multiple companies, bringing lived experience to regulatory functions. Thomas Griffin's transportation empire had collapsed under federal investigation, its components divested and restructured with independent oversight. His prosecution became a landmark case establishing new precedent for executive accountability in discrimination matters. The regulatory capture he had orchestrated was dismantled through reform legislation bearing Jasmine's name. Perhaps most meaningful was the cultural impact. Jasmine's original video had inspired thousands to document and report discrimination experiences previously suffered in silence. Corporate responses evolved from automatic denial to substantive investigation as market and legal consequences for mishandling such complaints became significant. Maxwell's technology company had recovered and expanded, focusing on developing systems that identified and mitigated bias in artificial intelligence applications. The Pentagon contract that Griffin had coveted ultimately went to Maxwell's team, specifically because their approach incorporated ethical constraints that prevented automated discrimination. For the Winters family personally, recovery came more slowly than professional vindication. The trauma of surveillance, threats, and betrayal created lasting hypervigilance. They maintained enhanced security protocols despite reduced external threats. Trust, once broken, proved difficult to fully restore even with verified allies. Jasmine's decision to pursue law school rather than her original plan of medicine reflected her transformed perspective. "I want to change the systems that protect discrimination," she explained when announcing her choice. Technology can identify problems, but legal frameworks determine whether identification leads to accountability. Their most unexpected reconciliation came with Ramon Santos, their former security chief, who had betrayed them at the height of the crisis. Facing federal charges for his role in the conspiracy, Ramon had ultimately become a key witness against Griffin, providing crucial evidence that expanded the investigation's scope. During a monitored prison meeting requested by Ramon, he explained the circumstances of his betrayal. His son's gambling debts had placed the young man in legal jeopardy, potentially carrying a 15-year sentence. Griffin's operatives had offered to make the charges disappear in exchange for information about the Winters family's security protocols. "It doesn't excuse what I did," Ramon acknowledged, unable to meet Maxwell's eyes. "But I want you to understand it wasn't for money or advancement. I thought I was protecting my son from spending his 20s in prison." Maxwell studied the man who had once been their trusted protector. "The most effective corruption targets our love for others, not our greed." Griffin understood that better than anyone. That understanding informed Maxwell's approach to structural reform at Skyline Airways and beyond. Rather than focusing exclusively on punitive measures for discriminatory actions, he implemented systems addressing the institutional incentives that rewarded such behavior. Service metrics were redesigned to prioritize consistent treatment across passenger demographics. Promotion criteria explicitly valued inclusive practices. Anonymous reporting channels provided protection for employees identifying potential discrimination. The transformed corporate culture became a case study in business schools nationwide. Companies facing similar challenges sought Maxwell's guidance in implementing meaningful change, rather than cosmetic diversity initiatives. Government regulatory agencies revised enforcement approaches based on lessons from the Winters case. One morning, exactly 1 year after acquiring control of Skyline Airways, Maxwell arrived at his office to find a small package waiting. Inside was a set of vintage Airline wings with a note from Darren Williams, the mechanic who had risked his job to provide evidence during the investigation. "These belong to my grandfather, one of the first black mechanics hired by the airline in 1963, the note read. He faced discrimination every day, but stayed because he believed things could change if good people refused to give up. He was right, just 50 years later than he hoped. Thank you for finishing what he started." Maxwell kept those wings on, his desk as a reminder that transformation rarely comes from singular dramatic moments, but from sustained commitment across generations. The slap that catalyzed their journey was merely the visible manifestation of problems long ignored. During the commemorative flight where Jasmine served as honorary flight attendant, she discovered something unexpected about herself. The trauma remained part of her story, but it no longer defined her experience. She moved through the cabin with confidence, reclaiming space that had once represented humiliation and fear. "How does it feel?" Maxwell asked privately during a quiet moment in the galley. Jasmine considered the question carefully. Like turning poison into medicine, she finally replied. What happened was still wrong, but what we built from it matters more than the injury itself. As the aircraft descended toward its destination, Jasmine addressed the passengers with poise beyond her years. Today's flight commemorates not just what happened to me, but what happened because of all of us who refuse to accept discrimination as normal. The journey toward justice never truly ends, but every step forward matters. Maxwell watched his daughter with profound pride, mixed with lingering sadness for the innocence she had lost. The experience had forced her to confront humanity's capacity for both cruelty and courage earlier than any parent would wish. Yet she had emerged not just resilient, but determined to transform systems, rather than simply navigate them. As the flight landed smoothly, Maxwell reflected on the unexpected resolution of their ordeal. They had entered the battle seeking personal justice for a single discriminatory act. They emerged having catalyzed institutional transformation that would protect countless others from similar experiences. The journey had cost them their security, temporarily damaged Maxwell's company, and forever altered their understanding of justice systems. Yet it had also revealed uncommon courage in ordinary people, the power of truth against institutional resistance, and the possibility of meaningful change when enough individuals refused to accept discrimination as inevitable. Later that evening, as they gathered for a quiet family dinner away from cameras and public ceremony, Miles asked the question that had lingered unspoken throughout their ordeal. Was it worth it? Everything we went through? Maxwell looked to Jasmine, recognizing it was her answer that mattered most. She considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness before responding. For me personally, I would never choose to experience it again. But for what it means for others who won't have to experience what I did? Absolutely. The answer captured what they had all come to understand. True justice extends beyond personal vindication to structural transformation. Their private trauma had become a catalyst for public accountability. The system that had protected discrimination now faced unprecedented scrutiny and change. As Maxwell looked around the table at his family, scarred but unbroken by their ordeal, he recognized the most important lesson of their journey. Systems of power maintain themselves unless challenged by those willing to accept personal cost for collective benefit. The path toward justice is never complete, but each courageous step creates possibility where previously there was only resignation. The slap that had once seemed to define their story had become merely the opening chapter in a much more significant narrative about transformation, accountability, and the quiet courage of those who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. That, ultimately, was the unexpected resolution of their journey. Not just personal vindication, but systemic change that would protect others long after their own wounds had healed. The Winters family's journey teaches us that confronting discrimination often reveals deeper systemic issues that powerful interests work to conceal. What began as a single incident of racial prejudice uncovered a vast network of corruption, showing how racism often functions as just one component of broader institutional problems. The story demonstrates that true change requires more than addressing individual acts of discrimination. It demands dismantling the systems that incentivize and protect such behavior. We learn that wealth and privilege provide important resources in fighting injustice, but also that even these advantages can be threatened when challenging entrenched power structures. The coordinated attacks against Maxwell's business empire highlight how economic vulnerability is weaponized to silence those who speak out against discrimination. Perhaps most importantly, the narrative reveals the extreme lengths to which corrupt systems will go to maintain themselves. From character assassination and surveillance to physical threats and institutional manipulation, the escalation tactics show that powerful entities recognize how dangerous exposure can be to their continued operation. Jasmine's transformation demonstrates how confronting injustice changes us, often forcing premature wisdom, but also cultivating extraordinary courage. Her evolution from a sheltered teenager to an effective advocate illustrates how personal trauma can become a catalyst for broader social change. Finally, the story reminds us that justice is rarely achieved through single dramatic moments. but through sustained commitment across multiple fronts, legal, technological, cultural, and institutional. Maxwell's decision to transform the airline from within, rather than simply punishing individual actors, shows that lasting change requires reimagining systems rather than simply removing bad apples. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and felt powerless to address it? Or perhaps you've stood up against injustice and faced unexpected consequences for your courage? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the strength to speak up when they witness wrongdoing. Has there been a moment in your life when standing up for what's right cost you something valuable? How did you decide whether the sacrifice was worth making? Hit that like button if you believe in the importance of challenging discrimination, even when it comes at personal cost. If you found value in the Winters family's journey from victimization to systemic change, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that expose the realities of discrimination and the courage of those who fight against it. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story. Remember that each time we refuse to accept discrimination as normal, we create possibility where previously there was only resignation. Until next time, stay courageous and keep standing for what's right, even when it isn't easy.